Hello techies, I'm Divya here. On behalf of CyberBrainer, don't you think the world of tech is evolving faster than ever? Now is the perfect time to dive in and build the skills that will take you places. With CyberBrainer, we are putting you in the driver's seat of your own future. We at CyberBrainer don't just teach your interest. We believe that knowledge is power, but it's applied knowledge that truly sets you apart. Whether you're diving into data science, mastering artificial intelligence, or exploring the world of cybersecurity, our courses are designed to give you the skills that matter. So let's jump into the session and make the future yours today. Thank you.
The concept of a data set is all clear. We understand what is a base data set, and we also created a derived data set. And for derived data set, we created lineages. Now I can come to my data catalog once again. Can you give me one kind of problem that helped me out to figure it out? All the stages doing by myself. Kind of, you can say, questions, or kind of a project or something that will help me out to at least dig in. Show my some interest for me to dig in. But I can actually. Creating any scenario takes a lot of time, or I can give you questions. That would be much more easier. Right? And then you can work on that. That is fine. Alright, let's quickly see where we were. I am quickly checking. I think DS4. This imports into DDSL. This DS3. If I can view this in new tab. At the same time, if I can view the lineage. That is what gives me the insight of where we are. If we view the lineage. If someone has. If you see, created something else. More import. This is what someone has created. I don't know. But any which ways. We can delete all pipelines except for the primary pipeline. Looks like someone has created a new join. What I'll do is, I'll quickly click on edit and let's see. And this is. This is fine. Let's see. What is this happening? The first thing that we did was union and union between these two. Right. And then we did a join. Let's look at pipeline. Company details. Importing. Base data set. Z-tree. Which is basically the work on details. Joining it. These two are unions. You, each data set, and checking out how they are connected. Because someone has emptied something. This is not relevant. This is what we did. We took if, remember, and primary wing. and we then joined it. Let's see. Where is this coming from? And someone has inked this into this. What I'll do is go in here. You can delete it. From here, I will delete it. This is a test. 10 and people changing. I think this is where they have imported. What I'll do is we have looked at the group by stage as well. Group. That is fine. If you want to. Just deport. I don't. I didn't remember you were showing me on here. No problem. Let's go back to the data set. Let me first delete this data set. This is how you can troubleshoot as well. Any changes which happen. Just lineages. The best place wherein you have the full visibility of what is. The biggest problem is you need to know that is a lineage or not. In the lineage which is the last piece. Because see the dependencies how they are. And you can figure it out. Right. Another way you told me to figure it out. You told me two ways. One is you see the dependencies and another way is. And someone has actually unpublished this. I don't know who has done this. Don't worry about this. Again, I'm just unpublishing it now. And once I unpublish it, I would have the ability that I cannot delete this or. Let's go back to our BDS. DDC. Once again, view the lineage. Status. Our Prism date catalog right now. This is our final data set, and this is where now I'll do the follow-up actions. Let's close this view in new tab now. On a data set, I can define a number of Prism calculations. Everything that we have done, or every column, every row that we have modified, that a row was either imported through a custom report or through a file or through an SFTP. We have not added any columns, any rows on our own till now. However, we can add additional columns or rows, and we can do that by creating calculated fields. At this point in time, in total, there are 34 calculated 34 fields, and all of these fields they have been achieved through joining and unioning the data which we imported initially. This is the list of fields that we have right now on our final data set. Now what I need is, I don't need these the VOD fields anymore. I had kept it till now that I could use this to uniquely reference my objects. I don't need these fields, parentality, supervisory wide, they are no longer relevant for me. What I'll do is go ahead and create a manage field stage. From if you remember, when we spoke about the manage field stage, we spoke about how it can be used to select fields or unselect fields, edit field types, but also view field changes. And we saw how this stage allows you to identify what changes happened in a particular data set, basically in your data source. Now I again have to manage my fields. Basically, I don't need these specific columns or fields anymore. And how do I remove them? I would click on Add Stage, and here I'm adding the Manage Field stage. Right, I'll click on Manage Field stage, and I don't need this VID. I'm unchecked selecting that. I don't need Parent Company VID, and I don't need Supervisory or GovUD. Let's see if there is anything else that we don't need. Plan ID. Everything else is fine. I'll click on Done. Earlier, if you see, at Join we had 34 fields. Now, after Manage Fields, we only have 31 fields. That's because we have removed a couple of fields. In addition to this, I want to add some extra calculated fields. The first calculation, let's say I want to build, is with respect to org level from top. This is how my organization structure looks. Today is 10th Web. This org level from top column basically identifies the level from the top. Obviously at the top, I have my top level supervisory org, which could be, let's say IBM, or let's say IBM, or let's say Walmart, right? Walmart Global, or any top level company. Under this, I may have subordinate companies, right? Let's say Walmart Retail, and I have Walmart. I have different business units. Under retail, I may have human resources, I may have sales, and on and forth. Each of these levels, they correspond to a specific entity in my organization. If you see, these are my specific companies. These are the business units within my organization. You see, these are my specific companies in these companies, under these companies, under these business units. Then I may have some divisions or departments. Under those divisions, I may have departments and on and forth. The first thing right now, based on the organization level from the top, I have this organization, or all of these organizations are at level 3. This organization is at level 7, and some organizations are at level 4. I want to replace these levels with this specific meaning, right? If it is at level 3, I want to replace these levels. With this level 3, I want to say that it is, let's say, a business unit. If it is at level 4, I want to say it is, let's say, a division. If it is level 5, I want to say it is a department, and on and forth. For that, I have to create a calculated field because I have to replace these numbers with some meaningful data. A Prism calculated fields can be created for different requirements, different purposes. Prism calculated fields. We can create these calculated fields for different requirements. Let me go on. Prism calculated fields. What are the different purposes for which you may want to create a Prism calculated field? These are created to basically again transform your data to modify your data, right? Prism calculated field has the same function as any other stage that you have added. You'll click on the Create a Prism Calculator field because you want to transform or modify the data which is there in your data set. Now, this consists of the name of the field. Whenever you create a Prism calculated field, you'll give a name to the field you'll specify. You have the option to describe that field as to what is that you're changing with that calculated field. And most importantly, it has an expression. Now, this is what controls what transformation that calculated field does. Right now, why would you create a Prism calculated field? As I just mentioned, it is created to transform the data, but what kind of transformation? The first one is the example I just took. It can be used to derive meaningful names or meaningful values from base fields. You can see now I have base fields which are simply numbers 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. These numbers may or may not have any significance to the end user. This is my base data. I want to convert it into a meaningful value. When it is 3, I know it is a business unit. I want to replace 3 with a business unit, right? Or let's say I want to. If I have someone's date of birth, from date of birth, I want to calculate their age, right? Date of birth itself. Again, it's a raw data, but age is what is a value, right? I can derive meaningful values from a base field. Right? I can derive a data. It can be also be used for substituting one value for another. That's fine. And other calculations. Let's go ahead and see how I can build a Prism calculated field. The first thing that I'll do is I'll click on this at the top, which is Add Field. I want to add a new field. I'll click on plus. Now, any new field is always added to the end. It's nothing but a column. Exactly, a field is nothing but a column, alright. Now I want to add a new column or a new field. Now, as I mentioned, what are the different aspects of a Prism calculated field? The field name. I'm calling this, let's say, company structure, right? The field type would be determined based on the calculation that I do or the type of calculation that I do. Now, how would I determine what is the type of calculation I'm doing? This is determined by the functions library. Whenever you open a normal field, if you see, you only get to see the field details, which is the type of that field, the name of that field, which cannot be changed, and then the values within that field. But the moment you click on a calculated field, in addition to field info, it also shows up something called functions library. This is the list of functions that you can perform for creating a Prism calculation. Now you can simply search for a function if you want. The function for creating or for substituting values. The requirement that I have right now, instead of 3, I want business units, and on and forth is a case. What is a function called case? Let me search here. You can search for functions directly. If you see, this is that function. Now to understand no more about that function, you can expand this, and here it gives you a description of that function. Case is a function that evaluates each row according to one or more conditions and outputs the specified result. What is a case? A case is nothing but an if-else statement. If you look at the case here, they have given an example as well as the syntax. The if-else condition is, if gender is equal to male, then the output instead of M, it should be male. Or else, if gender is equal to F, then output female. If everything is false, which is else, if gender is equal, to then return the value unknown. Basically, the case is checking the status of this field called gender and checking if the current value is M, then return male. If current value is F, then return female. If nothing is true, which means the value is neither M or F, then return unknown. That's fine. I'll click on this plus icon here. Here, it won't show you directly that. You are just right. You will have to build it. We'll simply add that syntax when I click here. If you see my syntax got added, you have to add only there, and now I can either add it here or I have this box here which gives you right. What is my requirement? My requirement is case when. Then remove this to the next screen. What is that we are looking at? We are looking at the field which is org level from the top. Let me go back. I can directly search for the field here. The field that I am looking for is this one. My requirement is to check with respect to this field, org level from top right. I'm saying if org level from top is 3, then return business unit and on and forth. Now, having looked at that, let's go back. Whenever you want to add some field, if you directly enter something, it will show you the functions. Because we want to add a field, I'll enter square brackets. The moment I enter one bracket, system automatically adds the closing bracket and it now shows me all the fields which are already there, right? Once again, I simply had to add one square bracket. And now, for adding any fields, we add the square bracket. Now I'm saying case when org level from top is equal to, let's say, 1, right, or 2, then what is that I need to be returned? I want this to be returned as, let's say, simply complete. Then is already here. Then is already here. Then again, I want to add a new. When condition or level from top is equal to 3-2, then I want this to be business unit and org level from top is equal to 4. I'm saying this is, let's say, a hub and on and forth. Org level from top is equal to 5. Then I'm saying this is a division. I can add any number of conditions. And that's alright. I'm saying this is a department else, and I'm saying it is a project or whatever. I'll apply. If there are any errors, it will show me the error condition. It will tell me that there are errors with your calculation. Let's move to the right. Let's see what is the error or requires a Boolean field. I have an error with respect to this field. Or org level from top is equal to 2 org level from top. Wherever there are any errors, it will show me that there are errors. Let's move to the right. Alright, everywhere the level is 3, it is replaced with a business unit and on and forth. Everywhere it is 1 or 2, it is replaced with a company. Alright, each of these calculations, they are very simple, right? We have calculations to truncate data. We have calculations to find the difference between two fields. We have calculations to find the difference between two dates. Let's do a few other calculations. This is a calculation, one of the most commonly used calculations, simply a case. Let's see what else is there. I have date of birth of the employee and I have the hire date of the employee, right? I want to find the date, the age of the employee as of the date he joined my organization, right? Again, a random example. I want to find the age of the worker when he joined my organization, which is basically the difference between the hire date and the date of birth, right? I would again move to the right. I want to add a new field. Now, this is a field wherein I want to find the difference between two dates. Either I can search for it directly or I can expand this and it will show me all the related functions. We see these are most of these are pretty common. I can find the days between two dates. Are these hours between two dates, minutes between two dates, milliseconds? What I need is the difference between in terms of years. I can take the difference between two date values. I'll click on plus. Again, I want to find the difference between the hire date of the employee and the employee's date of birth. Again, I would take hire date, date of birth. I'm getting the difference. Now, if you see, the difference is returned in terms of at least 10 digits in terms of precision after decimal. Now, what kind of data or values depends on the field type you have selected or the calculation you have selected. You will see this calculation. The return value is of type double right. Whenever you do or add any calculation, the field type is predetermined and also the return value is determined. Again, if you want to manage this, you can click on your Manage Field stage or add a new Manage Field stage. Right? Obviously, you don't need a precision which is 20 digits, right? Now I can add, after this, a new Manage Field stage wherein I'll be handling all the stages, all the fields. Here we added two new fields. One is company structure, and now this is the new field that I've just added. And instead of double, I want to change it, let's say, to numeric with only 2 digits per session, right? While the return value, which is where I was doing my calculation, was a double here. When I have added my new stage, the return value is, I've converted it into 2 digits, right? Again, I can give some meaningful name. I'm saying this is age on 5. Make sense? Any questions? No, I'm good. Just give me 1 second and then. Similarly, initially, when we spoke about fields in Workday, if you remember, we spoke about two types of fields. One is the instance fields. Again, wherever you add a manage field stage, this is the advantage. It acts as the baseline. After we added the manage error message, error kind of message. That's what I'm saying. If you remember, this is what I told earlier as well. Manage field stage. It acts as a baseline which allows you to view any field changes. After we added this manage field stage, we changed the field name here, right? Wherever you add a manage field stage, it acts as a baseline, and that is why it is recommended. If you remember again, we had mentioned that the manage field stage is usually the first stage that you configure on your base data set. Why is this the case? Wherever there's a change in the source of data, your base data set will give you an error. Similarly, a manage field stage is the final stage you configure before you publish your data set, because before your data set is published, if there are any changes, it will give you that error. Now, why is this error coming? Because after we added this manage field stage, here I changed the name earlier. If you remember, just now I changed the name of this field to age on higher because there was a change in this baseline. It is giving me an error. Let's see what is this error. If I click on edit, it says there are 2 errors and 1 alerts. If you see, it says a new field. What is happening? New field, I simply renamed it. Here, the next stage is seeing this as a change. Now, because new field is now renamed to age on hire, I'll simply delete this field. I obviously don't need this field. And age on hire, this I'm saying is a field of type numeric with 2 decimal precision. Manage field stage allows you to define a baseline and any changes on that baseline, and then we can then allow you to identify any changes that have happened make sense. If I now again add any or do any changes here, I have one. Whenever I do the changes in the manage field, it will create a one more tab in the down. No, this is something I added manually. And why did I add it manually? Because here in this I changed the field type. If you remember why don't you change that? Everyone, you can go ahead and do that one. No, you want it, it wouldn't. The reason is if you see, this is the output. These 2 calculated fields I have added in this manage field stage. Let me do edit. If you see, it doesn't even show me those fields. Those 2 prism calculated you have in one manage field. You have to create the calculations and the second manage field you that will. This is usually the final you add now because I'm not going to add any other stage after this. This is my final stage. Now, when I click here, it shows me both those calculations that I've added. For instance, after many days, I want to add 2 more calculator fields in that. Then you can add it here. I have to add it there again. It will be different. Yes, you can add any number. Now again, I want to add more calculations, right? I'll again click on add field. I can add more calculations here if there are any because you are adding field only, right? It should show up. Here it is. It will add as a one more field. I was really surprised to see it doesn't show in the same stage. It only shows in the subsequent stage. Alright, perfect. Now I want to do some other calculations. For each of these employees, again with respect to headcount, I can go ahead and change headcount. If you see, it is up to 5 decimal precision or 6 decimal precision. I want to change this now. It is any which ways. Now if you see, I have the additional jobs. What is an additional job? We already discussed that. This is a multi-instance field. If you remember, we said management level. This is a single instance field because an employee can only have one management level, but an employee can be working on multiple additional jobs. This icon that you see here, it identifies. If I click here, you see this is a multi-instance field and we had discussed about this earlier. Now what I want to identify now. If you see, this worker has actually 2 additional jobs. For each of these workers, I want to get a count of the number of additional jobs a given worker is in. I have some instance related function. I have some instance related functions as well, similar to how we have date related functions, exactly similar to that. I have some instance related functions as well. Again, I'll click on add field and the function that I want to add is related to instance. I will pick on add field as well. I'll go to functions library. Most of these functions are self-explanatory and I want to get the count of instances. If I expand, This instance count returns the total number of instance values in a multi-instance field right for each worker. It will simply give me a count of the number of additional jobs the worker is in, and it shows me the configuration or the syntax. Instant count and the count of the multi-instance field that I want to perform. I'll simply click on this plus icon. I have a meeting starting in 10 minutes. I'll simply click on this plus icon. And what is the instance that I want to count? Let's add a square bracket. I want to count the number of additional jobs that employee has. And let me say what do you mean by instant count. Instance count means how many times it is repeated. That's it. Function meaning example. You understand a class and an object, right? Basically, let me give. First, let's look at the result and then you can see for this worker it gives me a count of 2, and that's because this worker has 2 additional jobs. Let's say I want to check how many allowance plans a given employee has. A given employee. Let's say I have house rental allowance, and I get leave travel allowance, and I get a mobile allowance. Whereas because you are a manager, you get a car allowance, you get a housing allowance, and on and forth. What is an instance? A worker or Ravi, which is an instance of the worker business object, is associated with 3 instances of the compensation plan. Business object, one is HRA, one is LTA, and then mobile allowance. For a worker, a compensation plan is a multi-instance field, right? Because a single worker can be associated multiple compensation plan is a single worker can be associated with multiple compensation plans at the same time. However, a worker can only be associated with one career level. Management level is a single instance field because at the same time I cannot be a manager as well as an executive or an individual contributor or a leader, or while there is a one-to-one relationship between a worker and a compensation plan, right? This is simple nothing but the relationships that exist between different business objects. And there are 2 types of relationships, one to one and one to many. Similarly, a worker may have multiple addresses, right? He may have a permanent address, a mailing address, a temporary address, and on and forth. There is a one-to-one relationship between addresses, but a worker can only have one primary position. There is a one-to-one relationship between a worker and the primary position. Here I am simply counting the number of instances of a given business object that this business object is associated with. That's what instance count does make sense. It counts the number of relationships that you have. And to you do this kind of aggregations too. See if you're just creating a one we already saw right again. And now, if you see it is giving me a warning. If you remember, we see aggregations would not give me the interdependent if you see. Why cannot aggregations be done here? Because where is additional job? You see, these are two values within the same row. Right? These are not two different rows of data I'm talking about. How can you manage it with an angle, right? And what aggregation function are we going to do? Right, if I add an aggregation function, let me add it here, right? And the aggregation function we have discussed is group by. If I do a group by, this is how it is giving me data, right? It is saying how many workers have no additional jobs. How many worker has this additional job? How many workers has this additional job? It is giving me data in terms of this field, not in terms of worker, which is what I'm looking to extract data now. Aggregation will allow you to aggregate in the context of that field. It will not show you the relationship between two objects. It will not show you that Ravi is associated with 3 plants. Instead, it will show you how many people are associated with house rental allowance, how many people have LTA, and on and forth makes sense. Again, it shows me a warning, but that is fine. We'll handle that warning later. Now there are other simple functions that I can perform, right? Especially with respect to currency. Now, what is a currency? If you remember, we mentioned currency in Workday is a combination of the numeric value and the currency code. Before I can do any calculations on currency, I cannot simply add two currency components. System would not allow me to do that, right? I'll have to extract the amount of those currency components. Once again, if I scroll to the left, this is what I mean. If you see, these are all currency fields which are a sum of the numeric value and the associated currency code. If I want to add any two component or find the average, I'll have to first extract the numeric value, and they are a number. Most of these functions are self-explanatory, right? And I'm sure you have already worked with a lot of them. You already being a database expert. In which ways? Let me add one currency related function as well. Again at the end, I want to add a new calculate. It functions library, and I want to add a currency related function. Or see, from a currency I can extract the amount. As I mentioned, a currency has two components. One is the amount, which is the numeric value, and the second one is the currency code. I can either extract the amount or the code, or I can build a currency. How do I build a currency? By bringing the numeric value and code together. Here I want to extract the amount of a currency field. Extract amount takes the currency value and extract the numeric amount as a decimal point. Similarly, if I want to extract the code, I can extract the code as dollars or GB, P or on and forth. There are a number of currency related functions available. I simply want to extract the amount and amount of total base pay. I can convert the number of a currency value, and then I can convert the number of a currency value, and on and forth. Let's say and the second thing is I can also do nested calculations. For example, I have created this calculated field called company structure, which is a calculated field of type text. And now here I have extracted business unit and on and forth. Now on top of this, I can create another calculated field. You can create nested calculations. One calculated field can be used in another calculated field. Before I do that, let me change this name. I'm calling it base pay amount. I can add any number of nested calculation. Here, for example, I want to add have I already added a field? I want to add a new calculation wherein, let's assume, I simply want to reverse it. Nothing logical. I want to reverse. What does reverse? Reverse simply reverses the fields, right? I can take any text related field and reverse it. I'm clicking on plus. And what is that? I want to reverse. I want to reverse this one company structure. Right? We know that company structure is already a calculated field that I have created. Now, whenever you are adding any function, if you add an incorrect field type, system will give you an error. Obviously, when I'm reversing here, if you see, I have reversed a field of type text, which is already a calculated field. But I cannot go ahead and reverse a field of type numeric or an instance field. Because if you look like a data, mummy write L. Please do like, share and subscribe to our channel.